The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, good morning. Welcome in. Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Off and rolling on this stupidly cold Thursday morning, afternoon, depending on when you're tuning into the show. But Justin Kenner, Casey McAllister in the producer chair, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. Gentlemen, good morning. How we keeping warm over there? Is it much warmer in Hamilton? You know, I heard it's warmer in the South.
No, it's not warmer here at all. But we do have
Not too bad in here.
We got what we call the Velociraptor on. Now, for those of you who don't know what the Velociraptor is, it's like a $20 space heater that you buy at Home Depot.
Right.
So we got one of those.
And it has two settings, completely off and the room being 110 degrees.
Those are the settings of the Velociraptor. Oh, Casey!
Oh, my, Casey.
Casey!
What a pro's pro over there.
So that's our Velociraptor. And I'll tell you what, it does God's work.
It does. It really does.
It could heat all of Alaska, that little beauty there. Hi, Casey. How you doing?
Doing good. Just, shivering over here, but that's okay.
You're not getting the warmth of the Velociraptor.
Not quite. It's got to be directly on you. I know you said it could heat all of Alaska,
Oh, yeah.
but it only does that if you're
within the
you're
there's
within
not a long range. It's very tight, the area that it's willing to heat.
Sure.
Yeah.
Kenner, it looks like you're snuggling a water bottle right now. How's that water?
It's by the way, it's freezing in my studio here.
I
I don't know. So we had a game last night, a Wright State game last night. So the producer left the window open when he left. Why the window was cracked, I don't know. But it is like an air conditioner in here. It's pretty damn cold. So
Yeah, keeping the puffer on in the studio for the show. That's how you know it's a rough day.
T's and P's for old Kenner over here, throwing my way. But no, another day of disappointing Elliot not having the sounder back yet. I've emailed my voice. I said, look, you want to be slow getting me stuff back, that's fine. But when you're making me look bad with my guys, I need to get this back a little bit quicker here. Put a little urgency. Then something about guilt, spending time with family around the holidays. I don't know. I don't care about his family though. I need to get that back.
That's right, Kenner. You gotta
stressed every day about this damn opening segment. I'm like, I'm just gonna get rid of headlines until we get this back. But we won't do that. But we have a couple guests, Elliot. Right? We're gonna be talking the Crosstown Shootout coming up here in a little bit.
That's right. Our good friend and brother.
That's right.
And father.
And
quitter. Paul Fritschner will be joining the program. You guys might remember him from quitting, but he will be here in about 18 minutes or so to talk about the best rivalry in all the world, the Crosstown Shootout, formerly the Crosstown Classic, and probably something else as well. But that'll happen about 10:30. Very excited there, and then 11:30 we'll be previewing the Titans with a friend of mine. He works, I think, down in Nashville. JT Runke. He is a St. Xavier Bomber.
Let's go. Love that.
I don't love that, but he does work with the Titans, and he's a big J, as they say. So he's always at the press conferences and the media stuff. So it'll be fun to do that at 11:30. So we got a big show today. We got a packed show today.
Pretty excited.
And Molinaro's what time's Molinaro coming on?
I could do this, right? Can I
I don't know if you can, actually.
But it's Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wingham and Dayton. By the way, the next time you tell me that you're off, that is going to be the day that we get Molinaro.
I got a tweet sent to me. I want to say it was like at 2 a.m. on Tuesday morning. And this is our guy, Corey. If you guys know, he's the helmet guy, the Viking helmet guy. He tweeted at me, Elliot is Chatterbox Sports. And I didn't understand what that meant at 2 a.m. I didn't understand it. But apparently I said, thank you. Yeah, I am. And he's like, well, Kenner said you're not going to be on the show anymore. So I guess on Monday you said that I wasn't going to be on the show, and now our faithful listeners think I've quit and have gone to retirement.
No, I started out the show, I think on Monday. I said and then there were two because I think Casey was.
It was Friday. Friday's show was the day that Kinner and I did it, just the two of us. And we made it. We started the whole first segment. It was that no one else worked at Chatterbox anymore. And it was just the two of us that stuck along.
I like that too.
I said part of the stipulation of signing my contract renewal with Chatterbox was that we had to get rid of Casey. You know, the last time I signed a contract, it was to get rid of Reed. This time I wanted to keep that going. I wanted to get rid of Casey and you.
Yeah.
But that guy must not have caught Monday's show. But technically I did make a joke about you not being with us on Monday either. So, but you're back. You're back.
Better than ever. Better than ever. I had a bloody nose this morning. I've been blowing my nose nonstop because of the cold here. I go to Florida, I come back, I got bloody noses. So we'll see if that happens during the show. We do have an emergency plan. Everything will then be shifted to, I want to say, Reed. We're going to give it to Reed outside the studio.
If you have a bloody nose, we email you a video call link, and the next segment is watching you try to deal with that.
Okay, I like that. You're a bloody nose guy.
I am a bloody nose guy. I don't know that that's a great label to have.
Well, it's just okay. Sometimes I've never seen Casey with a bloody nose.
No, when it gets cold,
Casey's never bled.
I get bloody noses a lot around this time of year.
Yeah, it's a problem, so I had to deal with it upstairs. But now we're here.
I got beat up once. What?
You got beat up once? Somebody beat you up, Justin?
No.
Yeah.
Justin, what did you say? Did you tell him your draft? Did you tell him your draft take?
She was mean. She was mean. She was a bully. He was a bully. All right, and much
Very
bigger
good.
than. I mean, real tall, like 5'8". I mean, much
Very,
taller.
very good.
But hey, we don't have the sounder, but you know what? I will set you up for your headlines. We'll go ahead and give you a little music in the background. So there you go, Elliot's headlines as we get things going here on this cold Thursday. Elliot's headlines.
Oh, wow. I like your faint background music. I get thrown off by it every single time. We'll do college basketball first. I'm going to be honest, not a ton of headlines yesterday. It was a pretty slow hump day in the wide world of sports. BYU, they crushed Fresno State 95-67. But, AJ, help me out.
DiBenizza.
He has accepted his, or I guess, I don't even know what you say because he accepted it 4 weeks ago. But yesterday on First Take, he came out and said he will be going to BYU, the number one recruit in the country.
Reported $7 million deal for a one and done for college basketball.
That's insanity. I mean, that's just insanity.
Yeah,
but that's the wide world of sports today.
You talked about it right there. He committed yesterday. In the morning on First Take, he announced that he was going to BYU over Alabama and North Carolina, and then it was reported later in the day that he signed his NLI 3 to 4 weeks ago.
Sure.
Which means in that period of time, not only had his father and himself gone and sat courtside in Carolina and in Tuscaloosa to visit those schools, but Alabama's coaches and players had went and visited his AAU team play and watched them play a couple of games in Vegas, sitting in the stands to recruit him while he had already signed to play for BYU.
I don't know how that's allowed. I really don't know how that's allowed, but at the end of the day, this is where we're going in college basketball, so might as well just let them do whatever the hell they want. Kentucky, they take down Colgate, the Fighting Toothpaste. Kobe Brea led all scorers with 17 points there. So good for the Kentucky Wildcats. They win that game by 11. Do not cover the spread, though. Spread was 32.5. They won that game by 11. Won the game by 11. Louisville took down UTEP 77-74. Woof. Another team that didn't cover their spread, 14.5 there. Notre Dame.
Pat Kelsey, the Louisville coach.
I did see this
He
quote.
was asked about how emotionally draining it is to face Duke, Kentucky this weekend and also play a physical UTEP team.
Yeah.
He said, we get a bunch of free sneakers. I get to wear sweatsuits to work. My kids are healthy, and my wife's hot. So kudos to Pat Kelsey. What a killer quote after a tough loss, or I guess a tough close win when they were expected to win by a lot more.
That's a hell of a quote.
In college football, that's called a good loss right there.
That is, yeah.
So, Altiora to my guy. Notre Dame didn't cover their spread, 77-65. They beat Dartmouth. Pittsburgh, they beat a team 96-56. Shout out to Eastern Kentucky, all the directional schools. And Baylor won a game by 40 as well. That's it for college basketball. In the NBA world,
Wright State got a win last night. That's where I was. I was working last night. Wright State got a win over Marshall. They played Marshall 88-79, and they covered. That's what good teams do. They covered. They win and they covered at the same time. So
speaking of Marshall, there was some news about their football team yesterday. I talked about how their head coach left after they won their conference to go to Southern Miss yesterday. It is now reported that the entire Marshall football team is exploring entering the portal.
What? The entire team?
Because they're mad at the AD for not re-signing their coach that just led them to a conference championship and turned around their program.
Oh boy, that would be
So
very fun. That would be very fun.
The guy that does radio for Marshall, he also calls the games for basketball. So he was here in Dayton last night. What they have is they have 25 guys remaining non-scholarship. So they have a lot of non-scholarship guys left. The 2 quarterbacks that they are weighing right now to play are basically they have not taken any snaps in any games all season. So whoever starts that bowl game, it'll be their first snap of the season in any live game action. That's how ugly it's going to be for Marshall. You brought it up yesterday, but just the weird scenario over there. I didn't realize it was like this ugly and this bad. Like it's made. I mean, it has everyone talking, but it's a mess over there for their football program right now.
I can't even imagine that, but I can't imagine it because John Brandon did it to our program, and then all of our guys actually did transfer. So I can see the same resemblance there. Going to the NBA. The Rockets, they hang on to beat the Warriors 91-90. Steve Kerr blast officiating after the game. Terrible call down the stretch. But Rockets hang on to beat the Warriors in the NBA Cup quarterfinals. On the other side of the NBA Cup quarterfinals, the Hawks, they take care of the Knicks 108-100. Hunter Young combined for 46 points as the Hawks will head on to the semis. So there it is for the NBA Cup.
Round of applause to Jalen Brunson because
Okay.
after the game, Trae Young,
Sure.
when he was dribbling out the clock, rolled some dice on the Knicks logo.
Sure.
They were going to Vegas for the finals and a little celebration. They asked Jalen Brunson about it after the game, and instead of fighting him or tasing him or anything along those lines, he said, if we don't want Trae Young to do that, we should probably just win the game. So kudos to Jalen Brunson.
Didn't make a law about it. The Senators, they win 5-1 over the Ducks. And if you know I'm reading scores for hockey, you know we got nothing going on. Drake Batherson, don't know if that's a name. He scored to complete a hat trick. He had a hat trick in their win over the Ducks. So good for the Senators. They're 13-2. So that's an irrelevant game of all time. But one of the most irrelevant games ever. But that's it pretty much for sports headlines. Outside of that, we know Bill Belichick is heading to North Carolina. That was the big news from yesterday.
Another head coaching hire just came across. It's official. Rich Rod's heading home. Rich Rodriguez will be the next head coach of West Virginia. So a big deal there as well as they continue to try to build that program.
Yeah, there we go.
How about the reports of UNLV and Dan Mullen? Dan Mullen might be heading to you.
Mullen,
I thought about it.
That's a guy that got a raw end of the deal. He's a really good football coach that had Florida relatively competitive for a long time. And since they fired him, they've been in the gutter. I think Dan Mullen has deserved a job for a long time as a head coach in college football.
Yeah, when we watched that Urban Meyer documentary, Swamp Kings, whatever, he was in that a lot. He got a lot of camera time, obviously. He was a part of that staff. But Dan Mullen coming back, potentially UNLV. It's kind of like that North Carolina Bill Belichick deal. Like there's some I's being dotted and T's being crossed in the meantime. But they're in discussion for him to be the Rebels' next head coach. One point of emphasis has been a commitment to NIL and rev share, with UNLV prepared to roll out one of the highest NIL budgets in the Mountain West in the Pac-12. So thought that was interesting that you brought up the Bill Belichick thing. It was reading more about just kind of what the holdup was there. A lot of it was how committed are they going to be to NIL? If you're going to bring Belichick over, he doesn't want to just compete within the North Carolina scope of what they've been. He wants them to have the same opportunities with the big dogs, with the bigger brands that are out there in college football. They had about $4 million tied into their NIL packages over recent years. That's now been increased to 20. That's a basketball school. That's a school that uses a lot of resources to maximize their basketball program. And you got to wonder too, like I know basketball makes a ton of money, no doubt. And when you have North Carolina basketball, when you think North Carolina, you don't think of Bill Belichick and the football team, you think of the basketball team. I've always been curious about the tug of war when it comes to NIL funds between basketball and football, more so for basketball schools than football. Ohio State, it's easy. Jake Diebler's not going to win a lot of arguments over Ryan Day or whoever the next head coach is going to be if things don't go well. The football team will always get the majority of the NIL funds. North Carolina, that's Bill Belichick, say what you want, but the biggest win for North Carolina right there is that the football program more than tripled their NIL dollars and what's available to them. So North Carolina, with that type of NIL share, we rip Ohio State for the $20 million roster that they put out there. If North Carolina does that, they're going to be right up there with everybody else competing for these 12 playoff spots. So I'm curious to see how quickly he could turn it around. Jake, you had a good point. You can go either really, really well or bad. I don't think there's any middle ground. I don't think Mac Brown was in the middle. Mac Brown had North Carolina 500, competitive, bowl game eligible. but just never took him to that next level, and they were never horrible with him. Bill Belichick, it's either going to be great or god-awful. I don't think there'll be any in between.
I think he's going to be fine in year one, because I think a lot of the players that are there are going to buy into having Bill Belichick be your head coach. You're already there. It's a lot of fun. I think his system's going to be confusing for a lot of these quarterbacks in college. I think it's a really good defense. The question is going to be, can he get the players to execute his defense? I think that's a struggle. It's going to be difficult to recruit to North Carolina, but with the increase in the NIL, maybe that'll open the door to get some top-level talent, because most of the people talking about how good he's going to be at North Carolina is talking about how he did more with less in the NFL anyway. So if he has 3 and 4 stars and not the 5 stars as everyone else, he's still going to get those guys to be able to play to that level. My question is, how is he going to handle the guys that want, required playing time and a bigger deal on a Wednesday with a game on a Saturday? This is stuff you don't deal with in the NFL. These contracts aren't locked in stone. When guys are in New England, they're playing for the Patriots and they're locked in on how they can win a Super Bowl. When guys are in Chapel Hill at this point in college football, they're probably more focused on how big their next NIL deal is, whether it's with UNC or with another school. So I think that's something that he's going to have to try to navigate. He's a really good coach. If he can find people to take over that program and he can just handle the football, he's going to be really, really good. But I'm worried that he's going to get too caught up in the NIL and everything along those lines, and the football is going to have to go on the back burner, as it really does for every college coach in this era. Coaching football is the second or third biggest job as a head coach at a major university. So I am interested to see how it goes. He hasn't announced the staff yet. Have to assume Steve, his son's going to come over from Washington, be his defensive coordinator. Michael Lombardi, ex-Patriots front office guy, is coming to be the GM of the North Carolina football program. So a couple interesting things bubbling up there. But yeah, it is interesting to see how these two schools that have been predominantly basketball for a long time are going to operate now that they have to differentiate these funds to football as well, because you can't be competitive in football without money. I think North Carolina, maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but I think North Carolina could probably convince some people to come play basketball there without equivalent offers. But they're going to have to be right there money-wise with everyone to get star players to come for football.
I think the draw to Carolina, the football program now, would be higher than it's ever been, just because
For sure.
when you have a head coach that's been in the NFL that has so many connections in the NFL, the number one pitch is, I'm going to get you to the NFL.
Yeah.
And I have everybody's contact information. We will get you there. And I think that's all anybody wants to hear outside of what can I get from King's Toyota or whatever sponsor is going to throw me down $5 million to say their product's good. So, yeah, I think North Carolina is certainly on the up in terms of recruiting and all of that. So I'm excited to see what Bill Belichick's going to do. I would say if you had to give me an over-under 0 national championships, I would probably take right around 0 national championships.
Average wins for his 3-year contract. Average wins per year.
8.
That's what I said.
I think 8.
That's what I said.
I don't think he's ever.
Well,
I don't think he's going to get to one playoff. He's going to get to one playoff.
I think that's a good number.
I don't know who their quarterback is, and obviously that's going to be,
Yeah.
I think when you look at all the quarterbacks in the portal right now, I think North Carolina is going to get a good quarterback, and I'm saying that not knowing who their quarterback is now. Should he come back? Who knows? But let's talk about how Indiana got in the playoff this year. Let's talk about how SMU got into the playoff this year. There's a lot of teams that got into the playoff this year because they did not play very difficult schedules. Well, you look at North Carolina's 2025 college football schedule, they open up at home against TCU. So Bill Belichick's debut as head coach in college football will be a home game against TCU. They're at Charlotte. They have Richmond at home. And then they're at UCF, at California, NC State, Clemson, Duke, Stanford, Virginia, Syracuse, and Wake Forest. I'm not going to act like the ACC is this dominant football conference. It is not. I actually think, depending on who the quarterback is and how well they hit the portal, what is the excitement level like amongst athletes right now entering the portal and their willingness to play for him at North Carolina. North Carolina might be a sleeper team right off the bat with Bill Belichick, especially because of the portal and that schedule. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jake. I know, that schedule. Is anyone popping off the board to you as, oh man, that's an automatic loss right there?
No, I don't think so. I don't think the ACC is very good at all. And if Bill Belichick can, overhaul this roster and get some talent in there, I think they absolutely could have a shot to win. They were linked to Malik Murphy, which would be an interesting transfer quarterback from Texas a few years ago, played at Duke this year. For going from Duke to North Carolina, I know we don't usually talk about football with those two schools, but certainly interesting with the rivalry that they have. I don't think there's ever too tough of a schedule in the ACC, and they get Clemson at home. So that even makes that a little bit easier. I think they're going to have a really good chance. But if he struggles to get talent in there this year, he's going to be fine in the future. North Carolina has a 4-star quarterback, Bryce Baker, who's committed to them in next year's class. Right after Bill Belichick took the job, he put out something about how excited he is to play under Bill Belichick. Jared Curtis, who's the number 1 quarterback in the 2026 class, said that he really, really wants to go meet Belichick, and North Carolina has entered his radar since this hiring. I think this is going to be a big deal in recruiting. I think it's going to come down to how much of that NIL commitment is real and how much of it they're willing to give to transfers versus high school. That's a big debate with a lot of this stuff. LSU was come out as 3rd highest on that revenue sharing list that you were talking about earlier, with up over $20 million. But it was also reported from some LSU beat writers that they only had $2 million given to high school recruits this year, and the rest was to retain talent and transfer portals. So it's important about where that money's going as well, because we could look and say, oh, they have $20 million. That's great. He's going to be able to build a roster. But if they're not willing to give that to the transfer portal and they're only doing it for high school, or vice versa, it's going to really slow down how quickly he can build this thing. And it is only a 3-year contract, so I think they're going to try to put the foot on the gas.
Yeah, and again, it's the Deion approach. Deion at Colorado was to come in, blow up the roster, load it up with transfer portal players, load up the next year with transfer portal players, while obviously increasing the emphasis on recruiting at the high school level. And it's been a gradual, slow burn there as they've gradually gotten better. How patient will Bill Belichick be? That's going to be the thing to ask. But we'll get into more of that later. We got a lot more stuff to dive into. We're going to switch our attention towards the Crosstown Shootout, Xavier and Cincinnati, coming up this weekend. And we're going to talk about all of that and more coming up. Don't go anywhere. More Off the Bench next.
Yes. Welcome on in, ESPN 1410 Wing AM. Shout out to our radio listeners in Dayton. We are Off the Bench. Chatterbox Sports here. Elliot Rearing. We have Jacob Tissett, Casey McAllister, Justin Kinner. But now we have a very special guest. A very special guest. He hosts the Sean Miller podcast and is remembered most for being a part of Off the Bench, which he then quit. Paul Fritschner, welcome. How the heck are you, buddy?
It's great to be back, Elliot. It's great. Yeah. You can never truly quit. You always find your way back home.
That's right. That's what they say. You always find your way back home. And by the way, I've tried to reach out to Paul. I've tried to say hi to Paul. I go to a Xavier game where they score the most points in Cintas Center history, or they win the game by 7,000 points. I say, hey, Paul, let's go meet up. Let's go have some fun somewhere. And then Paul says, oh, where are you? I'm like, I tell him, Paul, I've told you 5 times. He's like, oh, well, maybe next time. So Paul just doesn't want to hang out with me, and that's okay. I don't blame him. He's a busy guy. This is a guy who hosts one of the most lucrative podcasts in the world. He also has a documentary which airs on Local 12. Is that right, or is it Fox 19?
Fox 19, but
Fox
yeah,
19. Okay, well I got it. Well, it's just one of the two. It's also on YouTube. Yeah. Episode 3 is on YouTube as of yesterday afternoon. Yes. So go check out episode 3 of the Sean Miller podcast on YouTube. But it's good to see you, Paul. It's good to have you back home. It's good to have you home.
Oh, it's great to be here, Elliot. It's great to be here. Yeah. I'm just waiting for whatever you're going to throw at me that I'm not expecting, because I know something's coming.
No, I have some very serious questions today. So before
no,
the
you
game,
don't.
Yeah, I do. I have some serious questions today. By the way, speaking of which, the Blue Blob, that mascot still sucks, right? You're on record for that?
Absolutely not. Did you see the new merch that they put out? I got a hoodie right away. I bought it right before they sold out.
The new Blue Blob hoodie is pretty nice. The new Blue
It's
Blob
fire.
hoodie. And people forget the Blue Blob origin story starts with this game. It starts at the Crosstown Shootout. I believe it was a prize to the winner of UC Xavier. It was going to be a red blob for UC and a blue blob for Xavier. Is that not right?
I don't, you know what? I should know this story better than I do. I've heard so many different, because the original story that I heard was that little kids thought the Musketeer was too scary, so they wanted to make something that was more kid friendly.
That makes sense.
And then I heard that story about the Crosstown Shootout, that the winner got the blob, and I don't know I honest to God, I don't know what the true story is.
I think my story is right.
I don't
think
know.
my story's right. Before we get to the game, I want to talk a little bit about the squad this year. I would say it's a pretty drastically different roster compared to what we saw last season from Xavier. No Fremantle or Hunter last year. With them available now, how much better does Xavier get?
They're great compared to what we were seeing last year in the front court. I mean, Xavier just was a complete zero last year in the front court, and now they definitely aren't as good as they probably would like to be, especially when you lose somebody that was going to be your defensive stopper, your shot blocker, somebody that was going to be athletic and clog the middle. And Lucina Traore, he gets hurt, tears his ACL before the season starts. And because of that, now you're kind of, again, fighting an uphill battle, having to put Zach Fremantle in the middle of the paint instead of having him play the four. But still, Zach, the biggest question mark going into this season was, can Zach Fremantle get back to where he is and where he was before he got hurt a season and a half ago? I mean, he hadn't played since January of 23. He missed all of last season, even the end of the 23 season when they made the Sweet 16. So because of that, you're wondering, okay, Jerome Hunter's essentially coming off what was essentially a heart attack and then an Achilles tear, and Zach Fremantle is coming off what he was having to deal with multiple foot surgeries. Can you get back to that point? And he has. I mean, he's been the best player on the team so far. He's been the reason that Xavier has been stable through some of these rough patches. He's been fantastic. I mean, he had 27 and 10 in 22 minutes the other night against maybe the worst basketball team I have ever seen assembled on a court.
I watched that game. There was a point, I was sitting next to a couple of buddies, and I looked at him and I said, this has to be, like, if there was ever a team, like, trying to tank, and I don't know what you would tank for in college athletics, but this looks like a team. I've saw so many layups. Xavier would steal the ball and literally walk into the hoop. It would just say, we're going to take the point and we're just going to run away. That's it.
It was crazy because, I mean, if you look at what you're incentivized to do now in college basketball, and it sucks that it is this way, but it's nothing against the coaches that schedule this way. It's nothing against the teams that have decided to do this, because right now they're incentivized to absolutely beat the living hell out of these terrible teams. Yeah. And Xavier hasn't done that this year, which is why their analytics and their metrics have suffered. They've dropped some spots because they haven't beaten those teams that they should by 1,000,000 points. Well, they finally do it by 61 against Morgan State. But, Elliot, I've never seen a team not try on defense more than Morgan State allowed layups and didn't close out defensively. I mean, nothing. They didn't do a thing.
I don't condone gambling, but the live line for Xavier's total points in the second half, I kept betting it. And it was like 101, 106, 108, 112. Surely they're not getting 115. Hit it, bet it, and it's a winner. Shout out to Xavier. It was one of the more fun games I've ever seen. But moving on. Quincy Oliveri, not on Xavier this year. He's kicking butt in the NBA, or at least in the G League. Is he on the Lakers' actual roster right now?
Well, he made his NBA debut the other night. Hit a three. He's kind of been up and down. You know, it's a whole Bronny deal.
Yeah, it's a Bronny deal. Bronny's really good, though. I think he's ranked dead last in the G League. Good for him. It's almost like nobody could have seen that one coming, huh? He wasn't really good. He averaged 2.5 points at USC. Not working out. Ryan Conwell, it does appear to be taking up that slack, taking up that mantle that Quincy had last year. Has he been able to give you at least some sort of consistent scoring, be that option for the Musketeers this season?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I would say Zach Fremantle and Ryan Conwell right there, 1A, 1B for best player on the team. I think Ryan is still adjusting a little bit to this level. I mean, we saw what he did at Indiana State last year. He was one of the most coveted guards in the portal in this offseason. Xavier's able to get him. I do think that there has been a little bit of an adjustment period, especially in the last few games for Ryan, where maybe he's felt the pressure of having to perform and having to carry the offensive load from the perimeter. Yeah. But all of that is to say that Ryan has been a fantastic player this year. He's been exactly what Xavier has needed for big stretches of the season. And he's going to be somebody that Xavier's really going to need on Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock.
Yeah. Trey Green, there was a lot of rumors swirling on X.com. I don't know how much you're allowed to say, but he will not be available due to a health-related issue for the next. And I guess I'll say the foreseeable future he won't be available. How much of a loss is this for the Musketeers?
He wasn't playing that many minutes, and there is a world where this does kind of in a backwards way benefit Xavier from the perimeter aspect of Dante Maddox, because Dante was constantly looking over his shoulder and having to worry, and basically competing, I would say, with Trey Green for minutes. And obviously Trey Green going down is somebody that, you could count on him at different points for an offensive burst, come in, hit a few threes, kind of be that microwave shooter, one of the best free throw shooters I've ever seen. I won't say one of the best. I mean, he's only missed one free throw in his 2 years at Xavier. He's like a 96% free throw shooter.
That's insanity.
He's incredible. I mean, he's incredible from the free throw line. But Maddox, I think, is the key to the perimeter of this team, which is weird to say given the very few minutes that Dante has played. But he is somebody that now in the last couple of games has looked a lot better. He's embraced his role. He's not turning the ball over as much. He's not taking those crazy threes as much. And if he can lean more into that role now that he realizes he has to play it because he doesn't have Trey Green competing for those minutes here for the foreseeable future, then in a kind of weird backwards way, it could end up working out as a benefit for Xavier in like a glass half full sense, where obviously you don't want to lose a player for an extended period, but if you have to find a positive, I would say that is one to look at.
You mentioned Xavier's been dropping in you always like the KenPom and the net and all those nonsensical rankings. They have been dropping a little bit.
Sure.
Those are not KenPom's nonsense. And once we all come to grips with that,
you out on the big KP?
Yeah, no, nonsense, absolute nonsense.
Not your guy.
No, okay. But it was a solid start for Xavier, 8-2. I mean, the two losses, I get you could have looked at those two losses coming to the year, those two games, coming to the year and say those would probably be the two losses in our first 10 games. Coach Miller, at least what I've seen and heard at these press conferences, I would say he expects a little bit more out of the Musketeers. But is this about where your expectations were, or maybe a little lower, a little better? Where are you at as a whole right now for Xavier?
I would definitely say lower. I definitely thought this team would beat TCU. I don't think TCU is a very good basketball team, and that's a disappointing loss. I don't think anybody saw them getting run off the floor by 25 against Michigan. Now, that final score isn't totally indicative of what happened in that game. They were down by 8 with 7 or 8 minutes left and then just totally fell flat in the last 2 wards of the game. So that's a little different. But all of that is to say, Xavier's offense has not been this year what we all thought it was going to be in the offseason, what we saw against Dayton in the exhibition, what we heard about when they played Notre Dame in a secret scrimmage where they're putting up, around 100 points in both of them. And that's just not what we've seen so far. Now they're coming off their best offensive performance in the history of that building at Cintas Center, but it's against one of the worst teams they've ever played. I would say, though, Elliot, all of that means they're going into Saturday. You feel better going into Saturday. I got asked last night about what's the feeling going into this Crosstown Shootout. And it's a better feeling for Xavier going into it off a game where you scored 119 points and shot 67% from three. I don't care who it's against. You could have played an AAU team. You could have played a high school team. And just to get that confidence back, then if you're going into this game off a road loss against a Big 12 team. And that's where Xavier playing that tune-up game where I know it's finals week for UC, but generally UC doesn't play a game in that week leading up to the shootout. They generally take the week off and try to prepare for the game. Xavier always, except for 2 years ago, plays a game in the middle of the week to get ready for the shootout. That's just how Xavier handles this game. That's what they did this year, and they beat Morgan State by 61. You feel a little bit better after just literally just seeing the ball go in the hoop. Sometimes you just got to see one go through.
Who do you think has a better roster this year? Cheatham Middle School out in Tennessee or Morgan State, wherever the hell they played yesterday, 2 days ago?
That's a great question, Elliot. Cheetah Musketeers does have a nice ring to it.
We'll
you
see
want
if-
some merch?
We'll see. I think they took a red approach though. They stuck with the
I know.
color.
I saw that. It was a little jarring.
Let's get to the game. I don't really even want to talk about the game, but I have to talk about the game. Xavier's won its last 5
Isn't that
meetings.
why I'm here?
Yeah, that's why you're here. They've won the last 5 meetings. Xavier has.
Why don't you want to talk about this game? Cincinnati is like 16th in the Ken Palm. They're like first in the
Well,
net.
I wrote out these questions.
Go ahead.
I just like to read it. Do you care if I read it, Paul?
No, please read.
Xavier's won the last 5 meetings. Xavier hasn't lost at Cintas in seemingly over a decade, 10-0 in their last 10 at Cintas. I'm going to say it so you don't have to. I think UC does have the better roster this year. However, I don't care if LeBron is on this team. This is never an easy win for the Bearcats. It's never been an easy win. Is this year going to be close, or will we see the Cats maybe have an easy victory? Let's see the Xavier guys say the Bearcats are going to have an easy victory this year.
I will not say that the Bearcats are going to have an easy victory this year, but what I will say is when you talk about this game and how close this game has been over the years at some points, Xavier has won the last 13 shootouts dating back to the 1980s that have been decided by 6 points or less. When it comes down to it, as our old friend Tom would say, when it's nut-cutting time, Xavier has been the team that has made the winning plays down the stretch. Remember 2 years ago at Fifth Third Arena, the game was tied. Xavier's up by 19? Cincinnati rallies all the way back. David DeJulius hits a banked-in 3 and 1, ties the game. Sule Boom goes down, gets fouled, hits 2 free throws. Wes Miller calls a timeout. Sule Boom then hits 2 more free throws, or 1 more free, whatever it was. Game's over. My point with this is Cincinnati has won games by wide margins in the Crosstown Shootout historically over the last 30 years or so. And you remember the last time they won back in 2018, it was a 17-point game. Xavier never really had a chance in that game. Their offense looked flat. They didn't even score 50 points. If you're UC in this game, because I think all of the pressure in this game is on Cincinnati. I think all of the pressure in this game is on Cincinnati, and specifically on Wes Miller. Because with the transfer portal and everything else, the players understand how big of a game this is, but you never truly understand how big of a game this is until you walk onto that court for the first time, especially as an opposing player. But all of the pressure in this game is on Wes Miller, who sat down in his introductory press conference and said they were going to beat Xavier, and now he's 0-3. He has to win a game like this eventually. He has to do it. And if you look at what Cincinnati has done so far in this non-conference schedule, they have a win against Georgia Tech, and they have done what they needed to do, like I talked about with Xavier. Xavier didn't beat the teams that they should have beaten by a million. Cincinnati did, and that's why they've been a metrics darling this year. That is to their credit. They have done exactly what they needed to do as defined by the selection committee over the last couple of years. But what they don't have, yet again, is that signature non-conference win going into their Big 12 conference slate. You have 2 opportunities to do this against 2 local teams. You have Xavier, you have a week, and then you have Dayton. You have to win one of those games, if not both of those games, if you are Wes Miller. Otherwise, it's going to turn into you can recruit, but can you win in the non-conference? This game is at home. This game is at Fifth Third Arena. The metrics favor Cincinnati. They're probably going to be a 9-point favorite.
Whoa.
But in this game,
no way. 9-point favorite? You think 9?
Ken Palm has it at 10. I mean, they're always within a point.
Oh, my God.
What do you think it is?
My number was 6. 5.5, 6 is what I thought it would be. But if it's, I'll eat crow if I'm wrong on this. 10 points for that big of a rivalry game, a game where UC is. I mean, I'm looking at the history here, and it's ugly. There's no way 10 points.
Hey, Paul, hope you're well. If it's 10 points, I'm going to put a lot on Xavier.
I think UC, again, last year I said it. Last year, if there was ever a year where UC was going to win this game in Cintas, it would have been last season. They didn't. They failed utterly. This year, again, it's the same type of situation. I'm scared of Fremantle, but UC certainly has the edge if you look at roster to roster. If they don't win it this year, I fear we'll never win it. But 10 points, I don't even know. I'm going to bet on the game. I don't know if I could responsibly wager on UC minus 9.5. I don't think I could do it. That's way too many points.
It might not be 9.5, but I do think it'll be somewhere in the 8.5, 9 range. I mean, Ken Palm's never that far off. Maybe they factor in a rivalry. I mean, but again, it's computers, it's analytics. They go by the numbers. Like, are they really going to factor in a rivalry aspect of it?
Yeah.
You know, Rick and I talked about it last night. He thought it'd be closer to like 7. But I mean, if you look at any metric that projects the line for this game, it's no less than 7 if you even want to get down that low. I think it'll be closer to like 8.5, 9. Either way, I mean, that's what you're talking about, which I do think is an inflated number. And especially when you get down to the fact that UC is the 4th worst free throw shooting team in the country, which is mind-boggling to believe. I just don't understand. I don't get it, Elliot. And I know it bugs you.
It's truly, and it's out of all my fandoms, it's the one constant that's remained I'm 25 years old. For 25 years, they have been so bad at free throws, and Dylan Mitchell's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Coming into their last game, he was 1 for 15 at the foul line. 1 for 15. That number is so preposterous that you can't even talk about it. You can't, because it's not a real number. 1 for 15. Yeah. He's been improving. He talked about it in the press conference after the last game. But I'll say this: it's probably going to come down to free throws. And if UC doesn't have it, I'm very, very concerned that they're going to lose yet again. And also, it's a first half. Xavier's dominated the first half of each of these last 5 games, and I expect a similar sort of output. They need the Bearcats to be ready to go. The Bearcats need to be ready to go right off the rip. You talked about Wes Miller, how much it means to him. You work very closely with Sean Miller. How does Coach Miller view this game? Is this the biggest game on the schedule for Xavier?
I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about the fact that this game means a lot to this city, and whether it doesn't matter what side of the rivalry you're on. If you're on Cincinnati's side, who have lost 5 straight, you're kidding yourself if you say that you don't care about this game, because it is the biggest game on both teams' schedules for the entire season. There is no doubt about it, because when it comes down to it, all you do is you hear about this game for an entire year. You hear about last year's game and the fact that Cincinnati was favored at Cintas with the roster they had and still couldn't beat a Xavier team that finished 16-18. You're kidding yourself if you say that this game is not the biggest game on both teams' schedules. Now, here's what I will say about Cincinnati. If they don't win this game against Xavier, they have opportunities to make it up in the Big 12. This is not a season-killing loss for Cincinnati, because you play Dayton, who is very good this year, has a game against Marquette this weekend, and then obviously you go and you play in the Big 12, where you're going to have a million opportunities to pick up some signature wins. Xavier needs a win like this season to really solidify the non-conference, where Wake Forest is now sub-100. South Carolina's in the SEC, which is the best conference in the country right now, but they kind of been in flux a little bit. They didn't beat Michigan, didn't beat TCU. For a win and for the resume, this game means a lot more to Xavier than it does to Cincinnati. It just take out the rivalry aspect of it. I'm purely like Selection Sunday. What does this game mean from a resume standpoint? It would mean more to Xavier to win this game by a wide margin than it would from Cincinnati's perspective. So from a micro perspective of getting into the tournament, what does it mean? It means more. There's more pressure on Xavier this year. From a macro perspective of winning the shootout, ending that narrative, trying to turn the tide and, prove that you can win a game like this if you're Wes Miller, all of the pressure is on Wes Miller. So both teams have a respective amount of pressure there. I think from Xavier's perspective, Sean Miller has obviously had a ton of experience in this game from round 1 now to round 2 that he's been back here 2-0 back here against Cincinnati in his second stint at Xavier. So, I mean, he understands what this game is. He understands what it means to this fan base, to the city, to everybody else. They don't take it lightly. They understand how big of a game it is on the schedule, both by metrics and by emotion. There's no doubt. People ask all the time, do the players understand what this means in a game like this, where they're all from the transfer portal, they're all mercenaries who just come in and put the jersey on and play? It doesn't matter. I mean, these guys know. Dylan Mitchell talked about it in the press conference the other day, because him and Quincy Oliveri are friends. Everybody knows. Simas Lukosius has played Xavier a million times, dating back to his 2 years at Butler. I mean, these guys know what this game means. Ryan Conwell has played Cincinnati 3 times, beat him in the NIT last year, scored 18 points when he was at Indiana State. He played him twice, didn't play very well, but he played him twice in his first year at South Florida. Zach Freemantle, Jerome Hunter, Davion McKnight, Dalen Swain, all of these guys have played Cincinnati before. So that's where I say schematically, I don't think Xavier is going to be overwhelmed. The question is, can Xavier mitigate the turnovers? Can they mitigate some of the rebounding issues they've had? And can they defend better? I don't think Cincinnati is an exceptional offensive team. I think Connor Hickman is my choice for a breakout candidate for Saturday because he's 0 for his last 8 from 3. He's had a kind of a miserable last 3 games, and he's somebody that if he can hit 2 or 3 threes and get hot, lights the crowd on fire, gets the team energized, maybe kind of gets some more things going offensively for Cincinnati. You know, can a Dante Maddox, can a Marcus Foster be that guy for Xavier? We'll see.
Do you think where is this game won or lost? Last year, I think Usman. I don't. That's how you pronounce that, right? Is it Usman? I feel like that was Usman. That was one of the better games I feel like he played all year. I think he had a double-double in that game. Aziz has struggled this season offensively. Freemantle versus Aziz. I'm gonna favor Freemantle in that. I like UC's guards versus Xavier's guards. Is it one down low or is it one around the perimeter?
This is a player's game. This is a game where scoring matters. This is a game where shooting matters, especially on the road. Can you go in, hit a couple of threes, quiet the crowd, and play without nerves? Where Xavier, I think, has a significant edge, and this is crazy to say because of Cincinnati's height. I mean, I think Arrington Page is a big body. I think Aziz has, like, the physical frame, but I haven't necessarily been impressed with Cincinnati's physicality this year.
Yeah.
And Zach Freemantle being 5-0, I know he hasn't played in 5, but being 5-0 as part of the team in this game and understanding what it would mean for him to go 6-0, he is going to play, I'm sure, with a ton of physicality around the rim. He's going to want to set the tone down there. And if Xavier can rebound, if they can be difference makers around the rim and score and be effective in the post, that could be the difference in this game because, you know, between Jizzle, Dan Skillings, all the rest, I think from Cincinnati's side, how healthy Dan Skillings is going to be a difference maker because he played 14 minutes. He's played 14 minutes the other day, but he came off the bench. He had some energy, deflections, was pretty good defensively, but didn't look like Dan Skillings, right? When Dan Skillings is at his best, he is the best player on Cincinnati. He's the biggest difference maker on that team, whether he's starting or playing starters minutes off the bench. Dan Skillings is the straw that stirs the drink on Cincinnati. He didn't look like himself the other day, and then he didn't practice. Is he back to 100% for Saturday?
I don't know if he'll be 100%, but as long as we can get a little bit better each day heading up to Saturday, I do think Dan Skillings will be one of the bigger X factors in that game.
Oh, yeah.
Because if he puts up, the Tony Snell meme where 0-0-0-0 in 36 minutes, we're in big trouble. There's no doubt. We need his rebounding desperately. So I'm hoping Dan Skillings will be at least somewhat. I'm going to say 90. Give me 90%, Dan, and I'll be happy. Final couple questions here. Final score prediction, number 1.
So here's what I would say. I'll give you the final score. I'll say 75-71 Xavier. And the reason I'm saying that is because for everything that we have talked about, Cincinnati maybe having the better team on paper, maybe the momentum, playing this game at home, quite literally the reason that I have picked Xavier this week, outside of, obviously being around and being a Xavier guy. I mean, there's no denying it. Everybody that's watching this knows that. It's hard for me to pick against Xavier until Cincinnati proves that they can win this game. That is where I fall. I mean,
It's fair.
I can't pick Cincinnati to win this game until they prove that they can win it. Because last year you would have said Cincinnati. I know it was on the road. I know Cincinnati hasn't won at Cintas in a while, but Cincinnati should have won last year's game by 5 to 10 points, and they didn't. They couldn't make the winning plays. Can they do that at home with this roster? I can't pick them until I see it, so I'm not going to pick them this year.
I think if you see, and again, if Jizzle James is able to do what he did the last couple games here, if he's able to shine, I do think UC is going to win this game. I think UC is going to win this game probably 80-75. It's going to be a close game. Like that 10-point number, that's preposterous. UC's not winning this game by 12, 15. It won't be a blowout. That's just not how this game goes. I do predict UC to win, but I'm a UC fan, so who knows? A couple silly questions here. I hear your voice leading into Cintas Center. You sound a little dry on that. Can you maybe retape that?
No, I can't retape it because I want to make one thing clear. I want you to know that your safety is my first concern.
Okay, that's right. Well, I was like, I had a bag with me. What's my bag size? Oh, Paul, over the magic intercom leading into the stadium. Oh, you can't have a big bag in there. So I'm like, okay, I'll put the bag back into the car. So thank you very much for that, Paul. That was beautiful. Final question here. We have episode 3 of the doc, as I mentioned, now live on YouTube. Will we be filming any of this leading up to Saturday, maybe the aftermath of Saturday? Will this be aired on the next Sean Miller doc?
Yeah, I mean, everything that is going on in this season is being covered. So, obviously what happens on Saturday is going to dictate a lot of what happens in the show. But, I mean, win or lose, you're not shying away from telling the story of the season. So, yes, we are very much covering this game just as we cover every single game. And, we'll see what happens on Saturday. And we're excited to tell the story of the rest of the season no matter what.
Well, Paul, I'm very happy that you came on today. I took up more of your time than I should have. So
it's all good, brother.
Thank you very much,
Does
Paul.
Jacob have any questions? He's been quiet.
I asked I said, Jacob, do you have any questions?
Basketball.
No, see, Paulie, the UC guys get real mad at me when I try to talk about any UC sport. They don't let me talk about UC. So I let Elliot handle it this week. It's a big week for the Bearcats and the Musketeers. I'm going to be respectful and take a step back.
Jacob dons the home team's jersey every year.
I do.
Will you be donning the Bearcats?
No. The way this season has gone so far for me, I'm a die-hard Xavier fan for this matchup, and that's thanks to our friend Ed and the Chatterbox Bearcats guys.
This is why Ed doesn't like you.
Yeah,
this is why. This trolling that you do, this yapping you do over there,
the
is why nobody likes you.
Paul, I don't know if you saw the clip I said after Ohio State lost to Michigan that Ohio State should opt out of the playoff because that game means
it's a nonsense.
Oh, I saw it.
Yeah,
the
Chatterbox Bearcats guys asked last night if they lose to Xavier, should UC opt out of the tournament? I think they must have forgotten that UC doesn't make the tournament, so that's something they won't have to worry about.
Ooh,
I just wanted to get that out there while we're here.
It's a preemptive strike.
Yeah. You can't not have me in your field of 64 because I'm not good enough. I'm not going to go.
All right, this is why Jacob shouldn't have been on. Paul, thank you very much. Get back to it. We love you, and if you need me, Paul, this is my phone. You just give me a little text anytime you want. All right, so you just give me a text.
Are you going to be there Saturday?
I'm debating buying tickets because my couple of my buddies are going and they're talking me into buying outrageous price tickets. So I don't like going to this game because it never goes.
The standing room at Fifth Third is fine.
It's fine.
It's fine there.
It's fine, but I don't want to go there for another loss. I can't. My heart can't bear it, Paul. I can't take it. I might want to just watch it from home. And if Xavier's up by 10 at the half, I turn it off and I go sit in my bed and cry. So that's what I'll do. But
I think I'm going to go.
Okay, Jacob's going. Maybe I'll go then. Maybe I'll go with Jacob. Paul,
I'll see you there.
We'll see you there. Paul, thank you very much, buddy. Have a good one.
You got it.
Happy
See you guys. See you, Casey.
See ya.
That's a longer segment, ESPN 1410, Wing AM. Sorry about that, Justin Kinner. But we will be right back here on ESPN 1410, Dayton, Wing AM.
Ratings went up, and now ratings going back down. I am back. Up the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410, Wing AM in Dayton. Yeah, I saw that clip earlier, Jacob, about, will they turn down the invite to the tournament? I figured those were tisset shots.
I got a good laugh out of that one. I got a good laugh.
You know.
I did have to look it up because I said, certainly they've made the tournament in the last 5 years.
I know, Jacob. That was like a gut reaction. That was a visceral feeling. He definitely doesn't believe that. He doesn't believe that take. So that was a silly take made by him. But it was right off the rip of losing another heartbreaking game to Michigan. I know you don't actually believe that.
No, I want them in the playoff, but I do not want them winning a national championship.
Come on.
Well,
yes, you do.
Ross Bjork rained on my parade today. He was on Columbus radio this morning, and he said that no matter what happens in the playoff, Ryan Day will be back on the sideline next year. So that stinks.
So what has happened with that too, and I do think Ryan Day's back next year. It's not whether I think he should. I think he will be back next year. But when he was the athletic director at Texas A&M, remember Jimbo Fisher, he killed it there. He had the best recruiting class ever in college football, and they spent a ton of money, and they were it looked like Texas A&M with all that that oil money in Texas. It looked like Texas A&M was about to take over college football right when the NIL era started. And then they fell on their face pretty quickly. He did say Jimbo would be back the next season. He's very confident. He feels like they're trending in the right direction. Jimbo did not lead Texas A&M that very next season, in very similar quotes made about Ryan Day. But I feel like Ryan Day is coming back because Jimbo was extremely bad at his job. Ryan's not extremely bad at his job. He's just
correct. He's just extremely bad at the part of his job I care about the most.
Fair enough, as far as that's concerned. But either way, nonetheless. But no, when I saw that clip, I was like, oh yeah, that was a shot at Jake. But you did hit that hornet's nest pretty good.
No, I love it. I love it. Look, I never knew where I stood in the rivalry, one of the best rivalries in college sports in this city. And I went back and forth and always rooted for the home team, and that's no way to do it. So big time shout out to all these UC fans for making the decision easy.
I will say,
so I'm a proud Jesuit educated man.
Paul said that spread could be 9.5, 10. If that's the case, I'm betting on Xavier plus 10. That's too many numbers. I'm sorry. Once we get into double digits to win that game, UC, I firmly believe will win this game. No chance they win it by 10. They have shown me nothing in the past 5 years to say that they're going to win this game. They're going to blow out Xavier. No way. I am the biggest UC fan in the world, UC basketball fan in the world, but I am not going to say they're going to win this game by double digits. I think UC has the better squad. I think it just comes down to, can Aziz hold his own against Zach Fremantle? I have a hard time believing that answer is going to be yes. But if you have Dan Skillings, if you have help around the area, Bearcats are going to hang tough. So we'll see. I'm excited.
So I moved to Dayton about 2012, 2013, and Xavier Dayton wasn't, that was Dayton's number one rival. They hate Xavier. They hate Xavier with the passion. Xavier hates them. Obviously, Xavier's number one rival is Cincinnati, not even close. But unfortunately, I never got to live in this city during the peak of Xavier and Dayton, as far as that goes. Dayton doesn't really have a rival sense. I mean, some people put kind of VCU in Dayton's rival category just because they were regularly running into them in the A-10 championship, and they were kind of fighting for the face of the A-10 during that stretch. But UD doesn't really have a rival ever since the Xavier rival went away. They don't have one. But Xavier always had Cincinnati. If you're a Xavier basketball fan back in those days when you had the hated rivalry with the Crosstown Shootout and Dayton, that was a lot of cool stuff to look forward to. Ohio State, Michigan, it's the one hated rival every year. But to have two hated rivals back in the heyday of that, when Xavier, Dayton going head-to-head, the Crosstown Shootout, that had to be a pretty cool run if you're a Xavier fan to have two teams that you just absolutely hated, and you circled those on the calendar every year.
It means a lot to this city. I don't know where it would rank in terms of rivalries around the country. Certainly it's not in the upper top 10. Reed and I had this debate last year, but it's not one of the most coveted rivalries in all the land. It's being played on ESPN Plus, and it's just a Cincinnati thing. But it means so much to us here. It's so cool. Xavier, I will say, for being a school without a football program, for being a relatively small school in general, I think them being so relevant in basketball and having so many of these important games, I guess, on their schedule. Yep. I will say that's a testament to how good they've built up that program. I'm not a Xavier guy. I'll never be a Xavier guy. But I will say the program of Xavier has been built pretty high up in the air, I would say. They're on the mountain. They have never been to a Final Four. But if you had to disregard that stat, I'd say everybody in the country knows Xavier basketball.
They're probably the smallest school with the biggest national reach.
I'm
probably forgetting someone.
I would say that. I would say it's one of them.
Gonzaga
I would say it's one of them.
What the size of their school is, but obviously WCC they're a little smaller. But yeah, I mean Xavier. Everyone knows about Xavier. I think part of that is the Crosstown Shootout and how great that rivalry is. It's cool how much it means to everyone in the city. As a guy that really didn't have a horse in the race for most of my life, it's cool how much both of these schools get up for it. It's cool to have a rival this close together. I think it's always good for sports when you have inter-city, interstate rivals. The closer they are, the better it always gets.
All we need now is UC Ohio State.
That'd be fun.
Ohio State doesn't want it. They don't want this smoke.
Nah, there's no reason.
Well,
to
to be fair about that,
it's the same reason you guys don't want to play Dayton.
Yeah, no,
Ohio State. But Ohio State not just was willing to play Cincinnati. When Cincinnati opened up your new arena, Ohio State back then when it was Chris Holtmann as the head coach, I was very surprised that Ohio State, Chris Holtmann agreed to be your home opener in a brand new arena. I mean, that was like running into a buzzsaw. I thought that was very cool of Chris Holtmann to do that at that time, because high major programs like that aren't doing that. And not that Cincinnati's not, I think Cincinnati's a very respectable college basketball program. Same thing with Xavier. But they don't have to go on the road to take on a Cincinnati team that was in the American Conference at that time. And I thought that was cool that they were willing to do that. But you bring up Xavier, not willing to play Dayton now. I think that has way more to do with the fact that Dayton is in the A10. I think if Dayton ever got out of the A10 and got to the Big East or something, I mean, obviously they would have to play there. But I just mean any conference. I just think Ohio State's not willing to come play Dayton because they're an A10 school. It's not because they don't think they're a respectable program. They're just not going to – Dayton or Ohio State will never go play an A10 school on the road. Xavier is looking at Dayton saying, hey, we've moved up. We're not going to come back down to play you. You're going to have to come up to play us. You want to, we're a bigger, playing a bigger conference. I think it comes down to those things. Cincinnati, Dayton going to play here shortly as well. While the Crosstown Shootout's coming up this weekend, Dayton and Marquette are playing. And that's a pretty cool opportunity for Dayton. Those tickets are through the roof right now. That's always a sellout there.
That's unbelievable. They're $600 to $1,000.
They cut down the student section drastically.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what the people are pissed about here. The student section is it used to cover the whole. No 400s
anymore.
Yeah,
or at least
they used to have the student section up in the top. They'd have it obviously on the baseline, and then it would wing out. They have shrunk that down by the original plans, and now the students that were sitting up top, they've gotten rid of those. I've seen people very angry about that because they should have sold as many student tickets. Students should have got first dibs on absolutely everything and had a deadline of, hey, you have till this date to buy these tickets. If you don't buy a student ticket by this, we are going to then open it up to the public and let it go. They didn't do that. Students are getting hosed in this particular situation. But Dayton, all they care about is money.
Yeah, that same kind of thing's been happening with college football playoff tickets at these home fields for the first round. Penn State, it was reported by a local reporter at Penn State that the student body did not request their full allotment of tickets, so they removed some of those sections and placed those student sections on Ticketmaster, SeatGeek, all those second-tier sites or second-level, second-sale sites. And then student body president came out and said, no, we did. We requested all our tickets. And thousands of students were denied tickets to sell these student tickets.
Now that's
terrible.
That's nonsense.
You have seniors that aren't going to be able to go see their last home game of their college career because they want to make a couple extra $100 for a couple seats. Not to mention the hotels in these cities are multiplying their night for night stays for game weeks. They always raise them for game weeks. But for this playoffs, the Fairfield Inn and Suites next to Happy Valley raised their price for a one-night stay 5 times. For the nights, 2 nights before and 2 nights after the playoff.
Dayton seems like a school that, and again, this is no disrespect. I know this is ESPN radio in Dayton, so this is no disrespect.
No, do it. You have my permission. I do it. You can do it.
I love the arena. The Dayton arena is truly one of the coolest arenas I've been to. I was just at UCF's arena. I've been to SMU's arena, a historic arena. I've been to some different college basketball venues. It's one of the best. It's not as good as not as cool as Fog Allen, but it's up there. It's a nice ass venue. Can I say ass? I can say ass, right?
Yep.
I can say ass. Sorry, everybody. But it's a great venue. It's a very nice venue. Dayton seems to run their basketball program like it's for everybody else. and not for the people in Dayton. It seems like they're just trying to show everybody else how cool Dayton is, opposed to instead of we're trying to be cool for our guys. We're trying to be cool for the good people of Dayton. That's what it seems like to me. It seems like they're trying to be a little bit bigger than they are, and stuff like this where students aren't able to go to this game, nonsense. Absolute garbage, trash. Those fans travel well. UC is going to have to play Dayton in that garbage arena, Heritage, whatever the hell it's called now. They're going to have to play them in a week or so, or 2 weeks. I don't know how long. It's right after Xavier. And they travel well. Credit to their fans, they travel well, but it's just like they don't carry that mantle. They're not a blue blood. I don't know why they have to keep acting like they are.
So that's and again, I didn't grow up in Dayton. So, I remember last week or 2 weeks ago before the Ohio State-Michigan game, everyone said, well, you're not from Ohio. You don't get it. I get told I don't get Dayton basketball all the time here living in Dayton mainly. But like as an outsider looking at that program, I think they have an identity crisis. I think they know who they want to be and who they think they are, but I don't think they realize that they're not perceived that way outside of their own fan base. I do think they dunk on their fans way more than they should, and their fans are too goofy to understand that. For one, like, okay, they get invited to Maui regularly. They get the regular invite to Maui, which is great. They perform well in Maui. But if it's about performing well in Maui, there's a lot of teams that would be invited to Maui. The reason they're invited to Maui is because UD fans fill up that place every single time. They are invited. Well. That's what those invitations are for. Yes, it's to fill those arenas up. Dayton gets invited to Maui all the time, not because they almost beat North Carolina, not because they almost beat, good teams and stuff like that. Like they get invited because they travel well. Dayton can lose the next 12 straight games in the Maui Invitational. They will still be invited because the Dayton fans travel well. So Dayton gets exposure that way. They get opportunities because of the fan base. Then COVID hits. They tell all of their loyal season ticket holders that, hey, we're not going to allow fans to watch games this year, but if you don't give us the license fee for your season tickets, we're going to give your season tickets away. So you want me to spend hundreds and hundreds, thousands of dollars to not watch Dayton games this year? Yeah, sorry, it's a business. Because they don't, not being respectable to their fans. We had natural disasters here in Dayton. We had tragic disasters here in Dayton. We had the Oregon District shooting. We had the tornado in Trotwood that was just so devastating. The Cincinnati Reds and so many people stepped up to help our community. Dayton didn't even do an exhibition charity game to help kind of give back to the community. The athletic director's response was, we give back to the community 365 days a year. I just keep this in mind. Bob Huggins, when he was at West Virginia, Bob Huggins in West Virginia did a charity exhibition game Bob Huggins with West Virginia and Duquesne. They did a charity exhibition game to help give back to our community because of the tragic events that we suffered. Not Dayton. Dayton wouldn't do it. That's embarrassing that two other schools, not even in our city, not even in our state, had to come together to raise funds to give back. Yes. So when you said earlier you were worried about stepping on toes to Dayton listeners, no, I'm going to do it because I'm defending. Dayton fans don't even understand. I'm defending them more than their own team that they blindly support half the time, and that's the problem I have when it's all said and done, and that's why. I'm not invited to many UD games. Let's just put it that way.
We're gonna go to break real quick, but when we come back, Ed, our good friend Ed, Jacob's good friend Ed, asked a semi-good question. Would you want to see a local kind of tournament? They do it elsewhere. Would you want to see an Ohio State, Dayton, UC, Xavier, NKU type of showdown tournament? I want to get your guys' thoughts on that.
I'm going to put Wright State in there. I'm putting Wright State.
We'll put Wright State in there.
They've been to the tournament in the last 7 years. They've been to the tournament with the tournament win more than Dayton. I'm just saying, just throwing it out there.
More than someone else too.
Quiet. All right, we'll be right back. ESPN 1410 Wing AM, Chatterbox Sports Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
And we are back. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett. I see people saying in the chat that I'm dunking on my local listeners again. And I said, no, I'm not. How is me saying that I think that our college basketball teams, that's the face of our city, should have done a charity exhibition game for the people of Dayton? How is that me hating on my listeners? That doesn't make any sense. Like, that's that blind loyalty. Like, you got like that to your program. That is absolutely insane to me. But that's not what this segment was going to be about. But I did want to react to that because I'm not like stirring the pot. It's not a bit. It's not anything. Like, I was really irritated, and this brought it all back up. Really irritated. I thought that was embarrassing for the city that West Virginia and Duquesne had to do a charity exhibition game to give back to the people of Dayton who were impacted by those disasters during that stretch, the tornado and the shootings in the face of our city, Dayton. It's in their freaking name, Dayton. Wouldn't do anything for anybody because they give back 365 days, whatever. It is what it is. But the question was, Elliot, the question?
And Craig was making fun of my question. Craig always comes in here and bullies me, but that's fine, Craig.
I think Craig makes a very fair point here.
No, that's not the case. Would you want to see a local type of tournament just regarding the teams closer, I guess, to the Cincinnati area, or would you say Ohio? A Battle of Ohio. It'll be UC, Xavier, Dayton, NKU, Wright State, Ohio State. Am I missing anybody from this area? I don't think so. Would you want to see a type of tournament like that? And do you think it would draw, or would you think it would get the right kind of attention? Do you think people would care?
No, I don't. I think it'd be fun. I don't think
people would care.
I don't think people would care.
Battle of Ohio.
I think the lower level schools would care more about it. Like,
sure,
I think in that list, the school that probably cares about it the most is like Dayton and Wright State.
That's
a chance to beat all these teams that you wouldn't have a chance to play outside of this proposed tournament. It'd be fun. It'd be really cool if every state did this and you crowned a champion of your state. That'd be a lot of fun. Yeah, you'd have to include the MAC schools as well. I mean, it'd be a pretty big bracket if you go, with the whole, Division I lot in Ohio for college basketball. It would never happen. There's no incentive for the bigger schools to play those smaller schools in that kind of format. So, I mean, it would be a lot of fun, though. It would certainly be a lot of fun.
And you can't do it anyway, given the fact that I guess you could put it as a part of the Crosstown Shootout.
You would have to have the Crosstown Shootout be built into it.
Correct. That would be the only way.
And then if you do a tournament, it would have the opportunity of them playing again, hypothetically.
Which would be crazy. I mean, that would be crazy. But I would like to see it. I don't think anybody's going to do it, but I would like to. I think it would be cool.
Who would be the holdout? Ohio State, right?
Ohio State would be the holdout, yeah.
I mean, if hypothetically everyone else joined, they'd be the last one.
But Ohio State basketball, I mean, that's not like a storied program.
No, not at all.
So I don't know what they would be holding out for.
So by the way, I do think there'd be a ton of interest in this, and I don't think it would ever venture outside of the main four. I think.
Oh, okay.
I think it would be like UD's. I joked about, not joked. I mean, I was giving Wright State their props a little bit ago, but like NKU, Wright State, they would never be involved in this. I think that you would have your core four of Dayton, Xavier, Ohio State, and Cincinnati, and then have that. That would be the core right there. I think that would be very interesting. Look,
so in that way, could you just play the Crosstown Shootout and then have Ohio State play Dayton and then two winners play each other? Then you avoid the two Crosstown Shootouts?
Technically, yes. Yeah. Yep. And then, like, obviously it all comes down to money. Scheduling is scheduling is a business. From everything I've learned, every athletic director I've talked to, every head coach, it's not just as simple as, hey, let me call up my buddy and see if they have any games. It's not like AAU or high school where you're just, hey, I have an open Friday in December. You want to play one another. It's all about business. It's all about the metrics. You guys talked about Ken Palm earlier. We mocked that stuff. Like the net rating. My problem with the net rankings are, when we talk about, oh man, like if you're a month into the season and you're going to get a net ranking based on who you've played, where you've played, how do you distinguish what is a quad 1 and a quad 2, 3, and 4 game when week 1 of the college basketball season, night 1 of the college basketball season, no one has played a game, but yet certain teams already have pre-existing rankings? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Rankings are supposed to be about who your team is this season and what they've done on the floor. I think with all the players moving all over the place, I don't know how you distinguish all that. I think that's a separate talking point. My ADD got the best of me there. We'll go back to that. Let me do a weave and come back to the original point here. The original point was, yes, I do think those main four, UC, Xavier, Cincinnati, Xavier, Dayton, and Ohio State would be the main four. You could sprinkle in maybe in like a rotation way. Like, I mean, there's a lot of MAC schools in Ohio. When you look at, Akron, and when you add the Wright States out of the horizon and Northern Kentucky out of the horizon, even though they're not really in Ohio, you look at all that stuff. You could sprinkle in those and make scheduling a little bit easier, but no, none of those. I don't think that would ever happen with the outside schools. It would just have to be those 4. But I give credit to UC Xavier because they don't have to play. They don't have to play one another. They could easily big time one another and say, well, I don't need you and you don't need me. And those athletic directors in those schools could easily just tell the fans to all buzz off the way Xavier did to UD fans. And I'm fine with that because Xavier's in a bigger conference. Do you? But I appreciate the fact that they don't have to play one another, and they do because it's egos and it's the brand biases that get in the way of why these types of things don't happen.
I do think it's interesting, too. I would love to see UC play. Wes Miller talked about it early on this year. He wants to be involved in one of those beginning of the season tournaments because I do think people care about that. Like Feast Week's awesome.
Yeah,
Feast Week's
the best.
Feast Week is. I mean, we talk about how important or how cool March Madness is.
I mean, until the first week of March Madness, it's the best week of college basketball.
By far the best week of college basketball. Like that's the stuff that college basketball has that makes it so great. Those in season. I keep saying preseason, pre-conference season tournaments. But I love them. I hope they do it one day. I don't think it'll ever happen, but one day I do hope it does. We'll see. We'll see going forward, though. I guess for a couple minutes here, I guess the last couple minutes before we get to JT and preview the Tennessee Titans game with the Cincinnati Bengals, do you have any predictions for the Crosstown Shootout, Jacob and/or Kenner? And Casey. Casey, how you doing?
I'm not gonna sit here and act like I've watched a ton of UC or Xavier games.
Sure.
That would be a lie. But everything that I've been told from both fan bases is that UC should win and Dayton or Xavier's gonna win. So I'm gonna pick UC because I just at some point they're gonna have to win this game. And
Eventually.
It seems like this is the year that they're gonna do so. I don't know what's gonna happen. That number is gonna determine who I bet on for sure. But I think I'm gonna pick UC. It will be a lot of fun. I will definitely be in the Chatterbox Bearcats chat if it goes the other way.
That's good to hear. Justin.
I'll roll with UC. This is I think like the best team UC has had since the Cronin era. I mean, there's been the John Brandon run just totally just flattened that program a bit. They had to dig themselves out. Wes Miller had to convince a fan base that he's the guy to come in and turn it around. And it was a little bit of a rocky start, but as long as each year you're adding more and more, and this year significantly better than the previous years. The last couple games, I mean, look, they have one loss on the season and they have a couple wins lately, but they haven't looked good in those wins, obviously. But a win like this over Xavier, that type of thing could springboard them with all the confidence they need. They do have Dayton coming up around the corner, and then of course it's all Big 12 from there. So I'm going to roll with Cincinnati. I just think that they have more to prove right now. They're trying to put an end to that streak that you're talking about, Elliot, but at the same time, they're not just trying to prove that. They're trying to prove that they're a legitimate top 25 program that is going to be positioning themselves to make noise come March. I'll roll with UC in this one over Xavier.
I respect it. Casey, your prediction. Are the Bearcats, the Fighting Bearcats of Cincinnati High, going to get the job done?
Sorry, I don't think they're getting it done.
Let's go.
I hate you.
I'm sorry. I'm kind of in the thought process with Paul. I mean, I'm going to pick Xavier until UC proves that they can win it. And I'll do that every year until they do so.
UC by 1 million, but actually probably by 5.
I think we got to check on Hell because it might have frozen over. Reed's in the chat defending the Buckeyes athletic programs.
Yeah,
and that's a crazy wrinkle.
And honestly,
for everything I've known about Reed.
It makes me sick. So what we're gonna do? We're gonna take a break and we're gonna preview the Bengals versus Titans. So eat that, Craig. Eat that, Craig. Get a whole segment out of it, not a touch and go. We're going to be right back. ESPN 1410, Wing AM, Chatterbox Sports. We are in Dayton. We are in Hamilton. We'll see you guys in a couple minutes here. Yes. Welcome back. Off the Bench, Chatterbox Sports, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Elliot Rearing here. We have Jacob Tissick, Casey McAllister, Justin Kinner is in his studio in Dayton. Welcome on in. Listen, the Bengals season is dead and it's over, but it's also not. There's that 3%. Ooh, that's just not. You know what I might do? I might make 3% t-shirts. That's what I might do, because that 3% might get us to the postseason. We'll have to see. And it starts this Sunday against the Tennessee Titans. We now welcome on very special guest, JT Runke, host of the Hot Read podcast. And I checked his Twitter bio. I was going to read it's like 8 pages long. JT, if you have anything else to plug, please feel free to do so. But I'm going to start with host of the Hot Read podcast. He covers all things Titans. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, boys. You know, I saw it's like 3% chance for the Bengals, and if
that's
win
right.
Out, it's like 13 or something. So you're saying there's a chance. Well, there's no chance for the Titans. They're eliminated. So, that's how our season's going.
They're eliminated.
But,
they're eliminated.
It's close.
But they're still alive in the tankathon. If they win the tankathon, they could win it all. Yes. I think coming into this year, both teams were reeling from I don't want to say exciting seasons. The Titans, I would say weren't very good per se, but they were building on something. And you come into this year now, and we've seen what happened. Same thing with the Cincinnati Bengals. You lose Joe Burrow. You come into this year, and you still have those hopes of the Super Bowl. AFC champions, win the AFC North. That's kind of gone. That's all over now. Both these teams are kind of reeling here. But in terms of, I guess, disappointment for the good people in Nashville, what are the vibes? Are they all-time low, complete rock bottom? Where are we right now with the Titans?
Well, it's hard to not say that they're at rock bottom when you only score 6 points against the Jacksonville Jaguars of all teams, right?
Yeah.
It's not a good vibe right now, but I think this is what we were expecting kind of for this season, right? After Mike Vrabel and the regime is kind of just, flushed out and Brian Callahan comes in and starts building, we knew that this was going to be more so a rebuilding year and retooling for 2025 to really be a competitive football team. The front office kind of made it to the fans where it was like, we're going to be competitive this year, but we're not going all in. And then you go out and you trade for L'Jarius Sneed and you sign Calvin Ridley and you do all of these moves to make it seem like you're pretty all in. And it kind of hinges on Will Levis and what he can do. Problem is, Will Levis has not shown that he can be the guy in any aspect this season. And so that's how you unfortunately are a 3-win team. And that, I would say for the vibes right now and for a guy like Brian Callahan, it's not great, especially in his first year when you only win 3 games. When you're losing games, the vibes are never going to be good. And especially for a first-year head coach who has had a lot of losses to teams that, you would think that a former regime or anybody else could win against, like the Jacksonville Jaguars and a lot of these other games that Will Levis has kind of thrown away, the vibes are always going to be bad. But underneath the surface, I think the vibes around here are that they're building something that if this team and this organization just has a little bit of patience, we might see some more success in 2025 and beyond.
To be fair to Levis, I think he's improved a little bit as the season has gone on, a little bit. I wouldn't say it's a ton, but early on it was such a disaster, and I hate to write off a guy so quickly. And I think there was at least a little bit of hope coming into the season that Will Levis was the guy, but you mentioned it there. This is the end of Will Levis. This is it. There will be no more Will Levis in Tennessee going into next year.
I wouldn't say never. There's just not a lot of optimism, I feel, right now, right? You had 4 games before the previous one against Jacksonville where you saw flashes of what he could be, which is a fine, starter, replacement level starter quarterback. You didn't see a lot of the guy that could win games by himself. And that's the biggest thing that I think Tennessee is missing, a guy who can really command the offense and take over the game. Then you get to Jacksonville and you're looking to build yet again on a 5th straight game of success, and you see him go 0 for 2 in the red zone. If you go back and let me just say, you go back and look at those 2 red zone plays that Will Levis had last week against the Jaguars, it is not good. He misses a wide open tight end on one of those against the Jaguars last week that kind of, doesn't give you a lot of confidence in him, right? You look at what he's been able to do in the red zone all season, dead last in EPA per play, completion percentage. Like, he has been struggling in the red zone. And that's a lot of what we heard from him coming out when he was in the draft cycle. And so you're just kind of frustrated with him right now because you see him get better for like 3 or 4 games, and then all of that kind of goes away and we're back to square one. And that's the thing you can't really rely on with a guy like Will Levis to be your franchise guy. You can't have him kind of going through the same cycle over and over again.
You mentioned our guy, Brian Callahan. You stole him from us. You stole Brian Callahan. He's had some pretty I like if you look back, if there's a one shining moment of the NFL season, you're going to see a couple Brian Callahan looking at Will Levis moments this year. The noticeable frustration, the post game frustration that he's expressed. Have you liked what you've seen for Brian Callahan? I mean, it's too early, and this season has sucked, respectfully, of course. But it hasn't been a great season for the Tennessee Titans. But has there been anything that you didn't see with Vrabel? Any noticeable changes? At least a little bit of improvement?
Well, I think you say it right there, right? It's hard when the season is bad to see the silver lining through all of this. 3 wins. However, like I've been on the opinion that I've liked a lot of what Brian Callahan has done for this team. You kind of look back towards last year and what Mike Vrabel had towards the end of his tenure. There was a lot of like losing the locker room vibes. Like that's really, I think, what did a lot of Mike Vrabel in. You bring in a guy like Brian Callahan who's here to kind of reset this organization and rebuild the culture. That's been a big thing for him this year. And you're seeing a lot of good things despite all of these bad losses, I should say, and these wins just by the skin of their teeth. Like, you're seeing the culture not give out on a new head coach like that. And I think that's one of the biggest things for him. I also do think that their offensive scheme that he's brought in is really, really good. You haven't seen it turn into a lot of points. And again, that is more of a Will Levis thing. But what he's installed here so far, I think is really, really positive. But the biggest thing, right, you talk about, it's too early to tell. And I think that's the biggest thing because around Nashville right now, there's already questions of, is Brian Callahan on the hot seat? I think that's a very real conversation we're having right now. But the thing that every NFL franchise right now lacks is patience. And I think that's the biggest thing when you talk about an organization who their controlling owner, Amy Adams Strunk, fired their GM, John Robinson, after the A.J. Brown game when he returned against the Titans and put up 100-plus yards and a touchdown. He was fired after that. Last year, Vrabel was fired in what could have been maybe an emotional firing, quick decision. That's something that the Titans currently can't afford. And so if this franchise can stay patient with Brian Callahan, I like him as a leader, I like him as a coach, and I like him as a play caller, for the lack of points that they've scored. When they're driving, there's a lot of things to like on tape.
You're coming off a brutal loss, you being the Tennessee Titans are coming off a brutal loss to the Jaguars. It ends the touchdown streak from Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. We were talking about it yesterday. We were going over a mock draft for the NFL. Has there been enough from this wide receiving core to say that we got some juice here, or is it just going to be we need a wide receiver? We're going to go immediately draft a wide receiver this offseason?
You certainly need another wide receiver. Calvin Ridley has been fine this year. I don't think he's lived up to the full expectations of what that contract brings. But as the season's gone on, you've seen him kind of develop into that wide receiver 1 role, especially after the exit of DeAndre Hopkins. NWI coming out of nowhere, I agree with you guys. I was very sad to see him not score last week because we've been preaching that, you put your bills on auto pay, you put your rent on auto pay. You can just put NWI anytime touchdown on auto pay, and it usually pays for itself. Unfortunately, we don't get that last week, but he also has done enough this season where I think he's worthy of a contract of 2 or 3 years, giving him some of that stability. He's been a guy who's been around here for 5 years, a former UDFA. And so, there's been a lot of talk for the last 4 years about, NWI is a nice 4th receiver for you, but he's never going to be anything else. Well, he's been more than a 4th receiver this year. And I think he's developed into a guy who can probably take over the Tyler Boyd role for this team next year. But yeah, they needed a X wide receiver, a number 1 true alpha, a young guy that they can call their own, which they haven't had since A.J. Brown. And so if you were asking me right now, if the draft was tomorrow, what the Titans need most, I'd probably put a wide receiver at number 2. They need an edge rusher badly, but they need a alpha wide receiver that they can call their own just as bad.
Has the Tyler Boyd fall off been a Tyler Boyd issue, or is that a Titans offense issue?
That's such a tough question, right? Like, it's a hard one to figure out. I want to say it's been more of an offensive issue, but at the same time, you just see his usage continue to decrease like week by week. But you're still seeing some of those things that he was brought in to be, right? He is still that chain mover that on third down, if you need a guy to move those chains, he can be it. And we see it like once or twice a game, and I think to myself, why aren't we seeing it more? And so I that's one of the things I haven't gotten to the bottom of yet, but you see that the usage, has really dropped for him. And, he was brought in, I think, more so to be a guy that can facilitate this new Brian Callahan offense to a lot of these guys here that were already here. And so he's been more of that complementary piece, probably not, he hasn't been as involved as I think maybe a lot of people might have been, but he still has had a positive impact on this team this year.
Looking at this game in particular on Sunday, Bengals versus Titans, there's no question the Bengals have the better offense this game. There's no reason to believe the Bengals shouldn't be able to win this game. Saying that, the Bengals have struggled a little bit when it comes to a bad team that has a somewhat solid defense. I don't know what your thoughts on the Titans defense is right at this second, but who is the difference maker defensively that would be able to contain Joe Burrow? Who would that guy be, if there is any? If there's not any, but it seems like certainly on the defensive side of the ball, there's a little bit more momentum to build off of than Will Levis in the offense.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, just looking at this game as a whole, you don't have to do too much box score scouting to realize that the Bengals should win this game, right?
Yeah.
They average 26.5, 27 points per game. The Titans are only averaging 17.5 or so points per game. So just by that, you look at this line on this game too, +5, I think it's at a flat 5. Like that seems a little, that seems a little light to me as well. So, it seems like this Bengals offense should be able to take care of business this week. However, if there was a guy that was going to kind of wreak havoc and take over this game on the Titans defense, it's actually going to be a tandem. I think it's Jeffrey Simmons and the rookie T'Vondre Sweat. If they can apply interior pressure on this Bengals interior offensive line, I think the defense is going to find a lot of success. Harold Landry and Arden Key on the outside have really not been able to generate pressure at all this season, and that's been one of the Titans' biggest problems. But if you get a guy like Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat, two guys who I think combine like 700 pounds or something on the interior of the defensive line, if you can get those guys into the backfield, you're going to find success. That's how they were able to beat the Houston Texans and upset them at home. You had a huge game out of Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat. They were able to get that pressure. They were able to get Joe Burrow outside, or CJ Stroud outside of the pocket, and that's what they're going to try to do with Joe Burrow. Now, the problem with that is that they have a guy in Jamar Chase who just currently seems like he's unstoppable, and
that's
so
right, he is.
That's a whole nother conversation to have. But on the front of the defensive line, I think it's Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat who need to have big games if the Titans want to have any chance to stay in this one.
Offensively, now, I will say Tennessee hasn't been good, but they have 2 games this season where they did put up 30. Are you excited at the possibility of them putting up 45 this week against the Bengals' disastrous defense? Do you see that? Do you see there's a little bit of a glimmer there?
Maybe, right? Like, this game is such an interesting microcosm of the Cincinnati Bengals offensive scheme, right? Like, you have 2 sides who know each other so well. Brian Callahan on one side, along with like a guy like Denard Wilson and Cheeto Awuzie on this team, Tyler Boyd, and then you have the Bengals. Like the Titans offense is basically almost a carbon copy of what the Bengals offense, Brian Callahan wants to make it the Bengals offense. So you might be seeing 2 Bengals offenses out there, and that's such an interesting game to watch. I would say that this game is going to be pretty high scoring because of just the inefficiencies that you've seen from the Bengals defense, right? I think You could look at a guy like Tony Pollard, who the year after the year of his injury right now has had a sneaky good year, one of the best running backs this season. If they can get Calvin Ridley going early and get Will Levis into a rhythm, I think you could find success. But man, even you look at what they were able to do against the Jacksonville Jaguars last week, even something like they're not as bad, or I guess they're probably worse than the Bengals defense, and they were only able to put up 6 points. So like it's hard for me to see this Titans team putting up 45. Maybe they can get to 20, and if they can get to 20, I'd say, anything could happen in this game after that, but they got to get to that point first.
Have you seen signs of quitting? Usually when we talk about these teams that are trying to get as good of a draft pick as they can, maybe you see a little bit of signs that they're just not there, right? And I think you would have seen that with the Bengals this year, whether it be we're just going to bench everybody and maybe not an open full-on tank like what happens in Major League Baseball. You're a Mets guy, by the way. Shout out to you this week. That was a pretty good week for you. But yeah. there's not a noticeable, I would say, difference when it comes to tanking. I think right when the Colts sucked for luck, and they had that atrocious season which got them their franchise quarterback. Have you seen signs of quitting, or is this team still trying to win games under Brian Callahan's first year?
No, I really have not seen any signs of quitting, and I think that's a testament to what Brian Callahan has been able to install in his first year here. Like, this is a team that still rallies around each other and is trying their hardest to win. You saw the frustration, I think, finally start to boil over after that Jacksonville Jaguars game. I think that was the biggest one where you could start to see maybe cracks in that foundation there. You had a lot of guys talking about, the rest of the season, your resume is your tape like that. And you can't just not go out there and play. And so, while that is true, that is the first signs of the frustration finally getting to this team. But when we've gotten to this point before in the season, after a lot of these crushing losses, Brian Callahan has been able to rally his guys. And so far this season, I think, there isn't a lot of signs of quitting. If you end the season, winless against, you have 3 more divisional games between Houston, Jacksonville, and Indianapolis again. Like, if you might be starting to see some of those towards the end if things start to, or don't get any better. Yeah. But as of right now, I haven't seen a lot of signs of quitting from this team for sure.
You're waiting outside the Titans facility as we speak in your vehicle. Look at that. Now, what are you going to – are you watching practice today or is this press conference, this media stuff? What do we got going on?
So it's a little bit of both. We have the offensive, defensive, and special teams coordinators today doing their media availabilities, and then we have open locker room a little bit later. So, it's a little mix of both. So. Okay,
I like that. A couple silly questions to end it. Our chat has been picking on you this entire interview because you don't have a string in the hoodie. What's your logic for no string in the hoodie?
I lost it in the washer, man. What can I say? It's like 30. It's 30 degrees out here today. I had to put it on. It's the only thing I had. My only clean hoodie that I had. So it's tough. I understand the chat. I totally fair, but what can you do sometimes?
Another chat question real quick before we get to my final question. Tony Pollard, if you have to take a look at one of the bright spots this season for the offense of Tennessee, it's been Tony Pollard. What do you expect on Sunday for Tony?
I would expect a pretty big game for him. Even if the Cincinnati Bengals are trying their best to stop him, he has been, like I said, one of the bright spots on this team and really underrated this season. In the NFL, you talk about a guy who's on the year after the year, and the way that the Titans are going to want to stay in this game is, being able to control the clock and limit the amount of plays that Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow can just go nuclear for, right? And so how you do that is you really pound the rock. And that's something that this Titans team got away from a little bit, but you could see it finally return last week. And so I would be crazy to not say that this offense is going to run through Tony Pollard this weekend.
He hasn't practiced yet, I don't believe, this week. How concerned are you at least there for Sunday?
Not very concerned. Look, he came into, I believe it was the New England Patriots game without practicing all week, and then ended up putting up, I think, 130 rushing yards in that game. So I'm not too concerned about that. If by off chance there was a reality where Tony Pollard is not able to go, I think that changes the math on this game dramatically. You know, Tyjae Spears has been a nice complimentary back, but if he has to kind of shoulder some of the load here that Tony Pollard has been able to, you might be talking about a different conversation and how this game goes. But ultimately, there's really been no indication from this team to me or anybody else here in the media that Tony Pollard's in any danger of missing this week.
That's fair. Final question. I sent this to Casey. I wanted your reaction on this picture I'm going to send over right now. What are your thoughts about
there
this?
There it is. I knew it was coming.
What are your thoughts about this?
I was gonna say something. I love it, man. You know, I found it. This is I guess if your chat wants to know, shout out Western Hills. You know,
that's right.
Our Lady of Visitation, the grade school. That's where me and Elliot went to grade school, and that's us. After our performance of Seussical the Musical Junior. I'm Mr. Mayor. I forget who your character was. But,
I am JoJo.
I knew this was.
I am JoJo, and you were my father in that. You are younger than me, and you were my father in that musical.
Yeah, it's crazy how that works. I found my DVD the other day.
Did you really?
In the box after moving. So yeah, I'm gonna have to pop that in one of these days and go back down memory lane. But
please,
shout out Busy Vikings.
You're in Nashville. Take some of that musical talent. Take some of that musical talent down there, and we'll see what we can do. All right, you can do it. You can be a successful beat reporter for the Titans and also sing. You can do both.
Hey, there's a lot of people on the Nashville beat right now that, you know, are men of many hats. One of our guys here on the beat, Sam Phelan, is a contestant on the finale of this season of Survivor. So
how about that?
You can do anything. Yeah.
How about that?
It's pretty crazy down here in Nashville.
Well, anytime you want to invite me, please, I'd love to come. I've never been to Nashville, so anytime you got
we'll go do a rendition of whatever song we sang in that musical on Broadway in a honky tonk. We got to do it.
All right, JT, we're going to let you get back to it. Have a good media day. Go ask the coach a tough question, and hopefully we'll see you soon, okay?
Will do.
We'll see you, buddy. ESPN 1410 Wing AM. That is it for the radio portion today. Everybody, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you to JT. Thank you to Paul. Thank you to Justin Kinner, Casey, and Jacob. This has been Off the Bench, Chatterbox Sports, presented by United Dairy Farmers, at least on the radio side. We'll roll it over for at least a few more minutes on the YouTube side. But that's it. Everybody, have a very pleasant Thursday afternoon.
Minutes to spare. I told you 22, knowing we'd probably bleed out a little bit. I always,
All right.
So,
veteran.
Fair.
You know.
That was a fair move.
Oh no, I'm not a veteran. Look whenever I'm leading segments, we don't hit breaks on time at all, ever. So
I told Casey. I don't remember if I told Elliot. Sorry.
We are live.
Oh, hello. We're live. Well, I told Casey on Monday when Elliot wasn't here, but the Friday show that Justin and I did, just the two of us, we did over 2 hours of content.
Really?
Yeah, not counting the breaks. We were at like 156 of showtime after we took out all the times of all the segments. So
how about that?
That's tough. Good for the listeners, tough for the advertisers.
How about that?
What do you think we talked about, Elliot? What do you think was?
What do you think Justin and I talked about in a solo one-on-one show for 2 hours?
Ohio State.
A lot of FC Cincinnati.
All FC Cincinnati. Jacob texted me, and I had no idea this was true. They have a second FC Cincinnati?
Yeah, there's an FC Cincinnati 2, and I would say pull up the tweet to prove it, but it was another plot point of that tweet that was...
Where do they play?
I don't know where an FCC 2 came from. There's backups, minor leagues.
I guess it's the minor leagues. It's the
just
farm
crazy,
team, right?
Yeah, it's their development system.
Wow,
Okay.
I didn't know there was that much money in MLS to have a development league.
Apple TV gave them the bag
impressive.
to have nobody be able to watch their sport.
Good for them. There has been some relative breaking news, more for me than really anyone else throughout the rest of the show today. But everyone at Alabama is going to play in their bowl game, which is a big deal with the new coach and new culture there. Saban didn't really have opt-outs, but everyone at Alabama is going to play in their bowl game. And Jalen Milroe has said that he has not made a decision about the 2025 draft. A couple other guys have announced that they're coming back for next season. So it sounds like the door's at least open for Milroe to come back or transfer.
Milroe's got to come back.
I would be shocked.
You don't think so?
No. I mean, he'll be a first-round pick if he goes.
Oh, I don't think he's a first-round pick. I think he's
he's
lost it a
QB2.
little bit. I think he's lost it a little bit. But we'll see.
Most places still have him in the top 10.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
Anthony Richardson went 4th.
Yeah, that's true too. You see how that's gone.
Pretty well.
There's some drama in there, though. I guess, moving on from that, I will say them beating the snot out of Michigan will be very funny. Well, the final score of that game is going to be 56-2.
No.
You think it's going to be low scoring?
Oh, I think it's going to be very close.
Oh, no.
Will Michigan have opt-outs? Do you think Michigan will have opt-outs?
No, I just think they stink.
No,
I think because they play Alabama.
It's going to be a close game.
I think because they play Alabama, I think that's that motivation to go play.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think everyone's going to play for both sides, or at least the vast majority. Maybe you have a Mason Graham set out as a top 5 pick or something like that, but I don't think you're going to have, double digits opt-outs or anything like that. It's going to be most of the roster, in my opinion, for both these teams, and I think it's going to be a pretty good game. I think it's the second or third best non-playoff game if you go through the bowls, so it's going to be fun to watch. I think the distant number 1 non-playoff bowl, Colorado BYU, Deion said Shedeur and Travis aren't opting out. That's going to be an awesome game to watch.
Yeah.
There was another transfer entrance about 40 minutes ago while we were doing the interviews as well. Malachi Nelson has entered the transfer portal, and that doesn't seem like a huge deal because, you might not remember that name, but Malachi Nelson was a 5-star recruit in the 2023 class. He was the number 1 quarterback in that class, committed to USC. And this offseason, going into this season, he had made a big deal, put out a letter, put out a whole video about how he's going to BYU so he can get out of the national spotlight, grow as a quarterback, be mentored in an organization, and kind of step back from the NIL 5-star pressure and be a part of something special in Boise State. Boise State goes to the playoffs, has a bye in the first round. He's out of there because he's not starting. So it's all a show. It's important to remember that everything that every player says is a show to get more money and get a little bit more respect. It doesn't matter if they get a bigger offer.
Yeah.
Dylan Raiola, Nebraska quarterback, does not enter the portal. He confirms that he will be returning to Nebraska next year.
And it was official in the middle of the show, Dan Mullen to UNLV as well.
Yep. West Virginia got Rich Rod, right? Is that who
That's
they got?
right. Rich Rod coming
I saw
home.
They interviewed Brian Hartline. That was talked about for a bit. But obviously didn't go the route.
I have to wonder how he interviews because this has been a couple times now. Now, obviously, Rich Rod, I think, was always the favorite to get the West Virginia job, but with UC settling for Satterfield after maybe they viewed Satterfield as a better coach. I don't know, but you just have to think that Brian Hartline's interviews maybe not going as well as you'd think because for a guy with the offenses that Ohio State's keep putting out, the first-round draft picks at wide receiver, the dominance in recruiting at the position he coaches, you'd have to think he'd at least move up to head coach at this point in his career. Maybe not. Maybe the money and coaching at his alma mater is what he wants to do. So I don't know what to necessarily blame here. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but he seems like a guy that should have a head coaching job somewhere, and I don't know what that comes down to.
I feel like you got to be a coordinator before you be a head coach.
He's the OC at Ohio, or he was last year. He was the OC at Ohio State.
He was the OC?
They brought in Chip Kelly to call plays, but
I see.
he's still the passing game coordinator.
I see.
To be fair, it's that Eric Bieniemy thing, though.
Right. Ryan Day
He's
called
not,
plays last year.
I mean, yeah, you have Ryan Day calling plays, and you bring in Chip Kelly to call plays.
Right.
The title was given to Hartline mainly because they knew he was going to be an assistant coach. A lot of people were going to try and come pluck away. So you give him a raise, you give him a more fancy title, and keep him around for a little bit. But, the whole argument about Eric Bieniemy was, well, he's the OC of Kansas City, but he literally is not calling the plays. He's not responsible technically for all the success out there. Hartline does have that title. He's working tightly, obviously, with that staff. But you're right. Or, to be actually the one calling the plays or to start out at a smaller school and move up, I don't know. You'd have to think if Satterfield's gone after next year, Hartline be a little bit more seasoned. Would that make a little sense too when that time comes? But
I think there's another guy that's going to be looking at that UC job when Satterfield's fired next year because I don't know if you've seen that.
Jake?
If you've seen that Wisconsin schedule for next season, UC might be getting their guy back.
How about that?
The
reunion.
Whew, that's not going well.
UCF.
Yeah, no, that's true. But, Wisconsin next year, they're out of conference schedule. Miami, Ohio, Middle Tennessee, and at Alabama. Certainly not the easiest thing in the entire world. And they go at Michigan versus Ohio State, at Oregon, at Indiana versus Illinois versus Washington. I mean, they play all the teams that are supposed to be pretty good next year in the Big Ten. So
what did he expect? What did he expect to happen when he took that job, man?
I don't know.
It hasn't gone his way. It hasn't gone.
I think that's my question about UC's desire to have him back.
Yeah.
You've seen how he's moved up to the Big Ten and it's not worked. Now you're not in the American anymore. You're in the Big 12. Do you think he's just going to be able to do what he did his first time here? No. I don't know that he's necessarily that desirable when he reaches the market again, at least for that school that I guess views themselves on the tier UC views themselves on.
But
outside of I was going to say, outside of Scott Frost being the Nebraska alum, him going there made all the sense in the world. But their careers are the parallels are very similar. They left their American Conference schools. They took bigger jobs. They capitalized on the momentum of what they did at those schools. Man, if we could do that with those smaller schools, what are you going to do when you get big school resources? Scott Frost failed. Not saying Luke Fickell has failed yet. It just has not gone as planned, and that schedule next year is not friendly. It's not friendly for good teams, and I'm not sure how good Wisconsin's going to be. Right. I said it a few weeks ago. I was like, hey, Scott Frost going back to UCF. I wouldn't be surprised to see Fickell and UC reunite at some point, but I wasn't aware of that schedule at the time. Casey, close us out with this. Pop that up real quick. I sent you, if you have it, I sent you the Indiana schedule. I talked about how Indiana's in the playoff this year. Are they a one and done? I saw people saying that on social media. Enjoy it, Cincinnati. It's a one and done year. Look, the resources that they now have, the momentum that they now have, and the fact that they have increased the resources and the NIL dollars, and then what we've learned from the committee this year, you don't have to have good wins to make the playoffs. Obviously, Indiana's proof of that. Look at their schedule next year. They play Old Dominion. I don't even know who that second team is. They play Indiana State.
That second team's Kennesaw State.
Justin, I just hope they don't run up the score. That's what I truly, because that would be
I'm going to have an eye on it.
That would be the worst possible thing that they could do.
That's right.
Is score a touchdown in the last couple of minutes of one of these games.
Can't do it.
We'll see. We'll see. Casey, hopefully you can ask Luke about that today on Dial In.
Can you pop that back up for 1 second? Because I do have another question, and it's what jumped off the page for me with that Indiana schedule. What the hell are those horns? What does that have to do with Indiana or the Hoosiers? Well, maybe I'm uneducated. I don't know. But what the hell are those horns?
It has something to do with running up the score, I think.
Luke, they put a bison on their Penn State graphic.
Luke, do you want to jump in this?
Sure. I think they're going to release a mascot.
Ooh. As everyone knows, the Indiana Hoosiers goes real well with, just automatically think bison. So, that lines up.
This is how we'll end the show today. Do you think Notre Dame's going to...
mascot.
Luke, do you think Notre Dame's going to run up the score against Indiana?
I'll be honest, guys. I think Notre Dame's going to win the national championship.
Ending off the bench with a doozy.
Keep that one tight.
Okay, all right. That's it for us on Off the Bench. We thank you from Justin Kinner up in Dayton, from Casey McAllister, from Jacob Tissett, from Elliot Rearing. Everybody have a pleasant Thursday.
Dial yourself in here in a few minutes.
Yeah, it's time to dial yourself in.
Dial in.
We'll be ready in a couple minutes.